thank you for agreeing to that.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, it's a great opportunity. Thank you.
Yeah. Hey, Ethel, welcome. Gary, Ethel is at the helm of our, the lead of our communications team, and she and Diane here and Deja are supporting technically today. And also Ethel has done tremendous outreach for today's event.
Well,
So,
thank you.
yeah.
It's certainly our pleasure. Thank you for your time.
Do you perhaps have any numbers for registration yet?
Yeah, it's not high. I think we have about 20. So usually that means that half will show for a free event. But
Yeah.
small is glorious as well.
I know that, well, often my library in-person readings are not terribly well attended, but I do get feedback from librarians letting me know that because it was live streamed and archived, that they have data supporting much more
Yeah.
activity.
Yeah, and we will push out the recording. And I also think, when I'm going around to do dementia education now, I'm adding the phrase brain health to it to try to reframe because, of the stigma. People are still so like a poetry reading on dementia and caregiving. That's like terrifying for a lot of people, given our cultural,
You had two elements of fear.
Right. So, so I think it still reflects the stigma and the fear. But yesterday, I mean, I was at a local Woodlawn senior center, and we had 13 folks show up for in-person conversation. So, and they were all in. I mean, it was over 2 hours.
Well, that's great.
So,
really
and when you see this commercial, I am just, like I told my colleagues, I cried, and part of it was joy because I felt like they nailed it. And for Chevrolet to come out during a holiday season and to put it there, what's pressing on all of us, front and center, was just so brave and courageous of them, I think.
Yeah, that's nice to know
Anyway,
that somebody's listening.
Yeah. So we have 2 minutes. Welcome, everyone. We're just going to give it a little bit of time. Gary's front and center, literally on my Hollywood Square Zoom screen, but we're still settling in.
Where's Paul Lynn?
I'm sorry?
I said, where's Paul Lynn?
Okay. I know I use this reference, but actually I'm really not informed.
Date myself a little bit.
Yeah, well, you're in good company here. Some of us. So do you stay on the island for the holidays, the winter holidays as well, or do you travel? Yeah.
We last Christmas we said we were going away and had plans, and a storm rolled through. We didn't have electricity for 3 days.
Oh my goodness.
My wife and daughter were on the mainland stuck. The ferry couldn't run, and so yeah, we needless to say, we're staying on Swans Island. We stayed for Thanksgiving. We'll stay for Christmas, and it's so hard. Living out here, you if you're not flexible, it's not a good fit. So
Yeah,
we just sort of laugh about it. Yeah.
That makes sense. Well, I'm glad you're all going to be together and not divided by again the wind gods that hit you yesterday.
We still have a month to determine that.
So Gary, in terms of the program today, what I thought is we'd have Q&A at the end.
Yep. Perfect.
Okay, wonderful. I see someone is calling in. So welcome everyone. We're going to give it another minute and then we're going to start as we settle. Welcome, welcome.
Hello.
Hi, welcome. We can hear you. Who's calling in, please?
Thank you. This is Rafi calling in. I just had a question. I didn't know we had to have WebEx in order to have the full experience. So that's why I'm calling in.
Yeah, well, I think you're fine because Gary we won't be sharing our screen. So it will be fully audible and it's recorded. So later, if you want to email me, I'm happy to send the recording. How does that sound?
Oh, that's great. So when you say the recording, you mean of seeing the reading itself, but you're saying the attendees won't be visible?
No, the attendees are visible. I record the screen.
Oh.
So we
Okay.
won't be, what I'm saying is there won't be photos or text on our screen. It's just a group meeting. So, you know, Gary will be reading. I think, Gary, right? You're not sharing a screen. Is that correct?
Correct. I'm
As we
reading.
talked about.
I've got
Yep. Yep. The
Okay.
only thing you'll miss, Rafi, is that the chat, Gary will send his contact, he has his contact information in the chat, and people may be putting things in the chat, but I will be happy to send you Gary's contact information later along with the recording if you would like.
Thank you. So I just respond to the email that you sent out yesterday to
Correct.
that address? Yes.
Correct. Actually, yeah. Or yes, that works. I'm not sure what, I'll have to double check that email, but just so you have it, my email is dementiafriendly@baltimorecountymd.gov.
Dementia
Dementia
Friendly.
Friendly, all one word, yep. At Baltimore County, MD for Maryland, MD.gov.
Baltimore County, all
Yeah.
one word, Baltimore County.
Yes, MD, all one word. Baltimore
MD.
County, MD.gov.
Okay. And
Okay,
that's all
so
lowercase, I assume?
yeah, I think, yeah, I'm not sure if case matters, but let's do all lowercase, yes.
Okay.
Okay,
Thank you.
good.
No, I've just not used WebEx before, so I'm sorry. I just wanted to make sure that
No,
I
yeah,
didn't miss part of the experience. Thank you.
no, I'm so glad that you're joining us, Rafi. Thank you. Yeah, for calling.
Thanks.
So I think
Thank
we'll
you.
get going. It's a couple minutes past, and I want to honor people's time. So welcome everyone, and thank you for showing up for today's reading and showing up for dementia support more generally. So let's start with introductions. My name's Emily Kearns, as most of you know. I am the coordinator for Dementia Friendly Baltimore County. My role is part of the caregiver program and resource support offered by Baltimore County Department of Aging. Today's program is co-sponsored by Johns Hopkins University. They are key members of our Dementia Friendly Baltimore County leadership team, and they are making today possible. So thank you very much to Jane Marks for supporting today's poetry reading. Gary, let me start with a brief introduction and then you can take it away. Gary Rainford is author of 3 poetry collections. Today he will focus on Adrift, but the other 2 are Salty Liquor and Liner Notes. He lives on Swans Island in Maine, and he's beaming in from there right now. His poems are shaped by tides, salt water, music, and experience, and are published by North Country Press, a wide range of literary magazines, university journals, and newspapers. Adrift is a love story, says poet Sharon Dubiago, and his poems tell the story of his mother's Alzheimer's disease. And of course, Gary will say more, but welcome, Gary. We're so honored and blessed to have you with us today.
Thank you very much for having me. Just gonna jump right in. So, according to the Alzheimer's Association's facts and figures, there are roughly 6.7 million people living with Alzheimer's disease. And I want you to picture what those numbers mean. I did a quick search for the population in Maryland. Maryland's population right now is 6.1 million. So picture Maryland, the entire state, as an assisted living facility. Your neighbors on your block, potentially as dementia, sick with dementia and dying with dementia. It's just a staggering figure. So when Ben, my neighbor, comes up to me at the ferry just 2 weeks ago, I live, like Emily said, on Swans Island. I'm 6 miles off the northeast coast of Maine. There's a 40-minute ferry run to the mainland. So Ben comes over to me and he says, I found a place for Belinda finally. It's a smaller facility than where you had your mother. It has 4 or 6 beds, he said. And Belinda, he goes on to communicate how her mind is completely gone, but he emphasizes how her body is just still so strong, and Ben's exhausted and he's tired. He's been caring for Belinda for at least 2 years now on his own, until he couldn't here on Swans Island. And then he looks at me, and I could see in his eyes, I could see the wind in his eyes. I could see the struggle in his eyes and the pain in his eyes and the storms in his eyes. And he says, Gary, I don't even know why I'm going off anymore. She doesn't even know who I am. And I know that feeling that Ben is talking about, because I've been there with my mother. And I told him, I said, Ben, I don't know if this helps, but it got to be the point where I was only going off to see my mother from me. I, as my mom's principal caregiver, went so that when I looked at myself in the mirror, I didn't feel guilty and I felt good about myself. And when I put my head on my pillow at night, I felt like I did the right thing that day. Ben looks at me, and I could see a little bit of relief in his face, and he says, "Yeah, thanks, Gary. That does help. So be it." On three, says John, the funeral attendant who drove from Fort Kent to pick up my mother's empty vehicle. And we lift her onto the gurney and into a body bag. May she embrace God and find peace. Hospice nurse Laura asked if we could pray, not knowing if prayer is how I say thanks or seek comfort. Amen, I whisper, expecting my response to sound dishonest, but it doesn't. Driving home from our friend's house on Thanksgiving afternoon, we receive a text, and Belinda mercifully passed and died that afternoon. It's that suffering that's really difficult for everybody involved when someone we love has Alzheimer's. About 3/4 of the way into my mom's diagnosis, I have her in a facility in Bangor, Maine, and I'm going off twice a week to spend the day with her. When you live on Swans Island, you don't go off island for an hour or two. It's a full day commitment, and you cross your fingers that you're gonna make that ferry home. Otherwise, you're hitting motels in Ellsworth. And I had a commitment down in Portland or Augusta, and I'm driving north, and I have just enough time to get to the ferry, and I'm getting close to the 182 exit, which is the exit on the 95 to shoot east on the coast to the ferry, which is in Bass Harbor. And I'm struggling because I at this point, my mother, like Ben was saying, my mother doesn't know who I am. She doesn't even, there was a point where she knew that I was family, that I was familiar, and that no longer exists at this point either. And I want to see her, but I want to get home and sleep in my bed as well, and it's one choice over the other. And then out of the sky, kind of like a mantra, in each of us is all of us, falls into my lap while I'm driving. In each of us is all of us. And I run that around my mouth for a while, and I decide, of course, to keep driving to Ohio Street and see my mom. My mom is called Bobby in this book. Her name is Barbara, but when I found her high school yearbook after cleaning out her house in Florida, all of her friends wrote to Bobby. I never knew who Bobby was. When I asked my mom who Bobby is, she had no idea. So I thought it would be a nice way to honor Bobby by having her as the protagonist in the stories in my book of poems. Karma, small little poem, fell out of the sky. I stopped at Bobby's to give her a kiss, because in each of us is all of us. Sometimes we just have to do we have to do things for others because we're also doing it for ourselves and for the people around us. When we love our friends and our family, we're loving everybody else around us and ourselves. It's really important. And so that was about midway into my mom's internment, I call it, her confinement in memory care. Before this internment, I call this before the fall. While my mother and stepfather are still functioning independently, although my stepfather is sick at this time, physically, he's still mentally very strong, and my mother was reversed. She's very physically fit and strong, but her mind was failing. So between the two of them, they were a pretty strong team. And I was a little bit concerned because, to me at least, an Alzheimer's diagnosis was more than an illness. It is a terminal condition, my experience. And I told my friend Donna yesterday before I said this out loud to a group of people. Donna has bowel cancer, has been fighting it for over 5 or 8 years, and I wanted to talk with her about hope. And I said, there was no hope with my mom's dementia diagnosis. There was no turning around. And I asked Donna if she had hope, and she said every time she goes into the hospital to die, she still has hope that she's going to live and beat cancer another day. That was a hope and a turnaround that my mom just didn't have. United Healthcare. What's your plan, Mom? I ask. If Jimmy dies before you, he's fine, she replies, as if he wasn't at the hospital yesterday. Shrill pain in his chest again while playing golf with his sons. I called Park Ridge anyway, Mom, the senior community in Blue Hill that I mentioned. Jimmy's not dead yet, she snaps. If you live closer, I can help you once he is, take you to the doctor, the grocery store, anything you need. I don't need help, she barks into the phone. Then what's your plan, Mom? What's your long-term plan when you're all alone? 911, she yells. There is no plan, no more long-term. This was a period when my mother was living in two worlds, I like to describe it as a world of clarity and a world of confusion, teetering back and forth sporadically. In 2017, everything changes. My stepfather needs a major break from taking care of my mother and asks me if I can fly down in September, pick her up, bring her back to Maine for a few weeks. And while he recovers from, he had another stint put in. I can't count how many stints he had put in. And of course, I agree. We have a plan in place. I go down there, and in 2017, if anybody remembers, Hurricane Irma just wiped through Florida. And needless to say, it was such an unnerving event for my mother that I couldn't get her on the plane to come home. There was no way that she was going to take a break that my stepfather needed. And things quickly declined. And by December 29th, I'm flying down to Florida, writing checks to bury my stepfather and packing up my mom to bring her back to Maine, where there was no real plan in place. But I found a facility in Bangor, Reincarnation. I remember this place, says Bobby, exploring the tree line from a rocking chair outside Winterberry Heights and watching the birds. You've been here before, Mom? I say. Oh, sure. I used to come here all the time. Bobby's eyes are dreamlets. That borderland, not quite awake, not quite asleep, tranced and peaceful. Don't argue, I tell myself. Let her be wherever she thinks here is. Who knows, says my brother when I tell him about my visit. Maybe mom in another life was a bird. I my mother wanted to be home so desperately. When I saw her, she begged me to take her home. When I left her and she called me in the middle of the night, she begged me to take her home, and it made me shift my paradigm a little bit, because Swans Island, when I landed here in 2001, was finally home. I felt like I was finally stopped looking for home. This was my place. I stopped looking for elsewhere. But I've changed that thinking a little bit, perhaps in preparation. But home, wherever I am, is right here, this moment, this absolute precious moment. And I say that wherever I'm reading this poem. I was down in Massachusetts last when I said that, and that moment was home. In the event that home gets a little scattered for me at some point. The the um the loss that my mom experienced was something I wasn't entirely prepared for. Tug of war. I'm supposed to be your mother. Bobby shifts in her chair, rubs rose petals between her fingers. But I'm not mother material anymore. I'm more like a little girl again who needs her own mother. But my mother's been dead for decades, and you're Gary, one of my sons, right? I I I I discovered early on that although my mother was not a, how do I put it, a deliverer of I love yous growing up. She did not disperse I love you very much. In fact, when she started saying I love you to me, once she was in, it wasn't until she was in memory care that she started really saying I love you to me as often and as for the first time as often as ever. Um, it was around that period when I realized that love perhaps was all we had left for one another, um, to survive the experience for her and for myself. Daily bread. Tuesday, Mom, in 2 days. It's Sunday? Really? Okay, Tuesday, I guess, Bobby replies, shaky, on the edge of confused tears. All I need is you to tell me you love me. I do, Mom. I love you. Head Start program for seniors. Whose coat is this? Lynette says, about the brown winter coat with faux fur trim around the hood that's balled up on the table in the common area, where I'm trying to get Bobby to sit for lunch. Pork chops, apple chutney, green beans, and biscuit. Lynette picks up the brown winter coat with faux fur trim, admires the softness on her face, slips it on, and slinks away like an episode of kleptomania. That's mine. Bobby reaches out, the look on her face desperate as a 4-year-old on guard at her toy box. My father bought that for me when I was a girl. Bobby pinches fleshy, fresh. Bobby pinches flaky flesh from a warm, buttery biscuit. I came across a woman, I came across a lot of people at Winterberry Heights that really helped me day by day get through my mother's care. And this one woman, Elaine, always struck me as a little bit different in that she was nothing like my mother. My mother was very angry. And Elaine was completely the opposite. And Elaine told me that she was, and I thought she worked at Winterberry Heights at first, the way she sort of navigated the rooms. And she told me that she was a assisted living healthcare worker her entire life. And now she was a resident at the assisted living side of Winterberry. And she comes over to me after my mom had an accident. Ken Kesey, how's your mother? Elaine shuffles over. I'm signing the visitor log at the reception desk. You are Bobby's son, right? Yes, I reply. I'm the youngest. I watched her slipping right out of the arms of two aides like a trust fall. I glance at the open staircase. Over 10 steps at the first landing, 45-degree slope. Bobby must have bounced twice before striking her head, I calculate. I'm so glad she's all right, Elaine sighs. This is some one flew over the cuckoo's nest place. 1 minute you're glad, then you're mad, and then you're glad again, like you have no vote. I guess we're all walking in circles. Elaine seizes her quad cane, pats my hand, then shuffles off to Zumba. Recently, another friend and neighbor on Swans Island had to have a procedure done down in Boston, which left his wife, who has dementia, alone. And Bev, like I said about my mom, lives in two worlds, a clear world and an unclear world. And Tom put in place enough friends and neighbors to oversee Bev's care so that she was safe. And the dinner, one of my nights I had was to pick her up and have dinner with Bev. And so she comes to my house, and I'm prepared. I'm prepared for how when I go to see my mother, I'm prepared emotionally and mentally to just go with the flow, so to speak. But Bev walks in the house, and she there is a bit of, she's a bit disheveled. Her hair is not like how her hair generally is. There's a decline in that. But aside from that, Bev comes in the house and she just seems completely clear and on point. She knows everything about my daughter being away at boarding school this year. She knows everything about me teaching. She knows everything about my wife teaching. She talks about people on the island. She references the names. And we're walking through my house and we go to the kitchen where I have food kind of staged on the peninsula. And she's looking around, and I've got these big exposed beams, these 200-plus-year-old beams in my kitchen. And she's looking up and she's looking in the family room and she goes, I can't believe, and I've been here since 2001. And I've known Bev that long. And she says, I can't believe I've known you for so long and I've never been in your house before. And it was just one of those, momentarily dead silent experiences that you had to move away from, because there's no sense in engaging that. But it was just so amazing to me that Bev's brain was so compartmentalized, yet she seemed so completely healthy and clear. Thanks for nothing. You don't do enough for me, says Bobby, shaking, anxious from an unreachable itch on her back, which I'm scratching over a V-neck blouse. Mom, I reply, I changed my entire life to take care of you. Well, it doesn't feel like it, Bobby aims her bug bite at my fingernails. After about 9 or 10 months at Winterberry Heights, I finally accept the terminal nature of my mom's illness. There's complete acceptance. My mother had been in denial from the beginning. She was in denial until her very last breath. However, this was a point, a watershed point for me. This was my acceptance, a Dunkin' Donuts worldview. Look at my hands. Bobby spits, jelly donut in a wobbly tailspin. The shock on her face tracks the sugar as it powders the table. What the hell? She looks at me. Are you a jelly donut as half empty or half full kind of lady? Half dead? She sneers at her hands trembling against her will. I wish I could time travel back before the diagnosis. I would hold Bobby's hands steady, edit the scenes in her life that amount to Alzheimer's disease. Your imbalance is 80 years of caffeine, jelly donuts, and trouble, Mom. Why do you talk so foolish? She points as if I delivered an injustice greater than the lumps of dementia proteins eating away her thoughts. I'm the Three Stooges, Mom, I reply. But she's tottering for the emergency exit now, her brain on a collision course, with every green leaf turning brown, aware, yet not aware of the seasons. Path of least resistance. Google Maps sends us into historic Queen City, Bangor. Left on Congress, left on Broadway, then another left on Stillwater. Look at that, says Bobby, pointing down a dead end. What? I ask. A monkey ran across the road. She nods. I've never seen a monkey do that before. It's rare, I reply, not looking for conflict, trying to accept. Art of mindfulness, art of mindfulness. Bobby Swan Lakes in her chair, opera on the radio. A woman's graphic voice, Russian and vivid. Your baby is beautiful, I say to Bobby, kissing the doll's head. Is she your baby? No. Bobby sighs, turns the baby in her lap to face her. Look at his eyes, they're so blue, she admires. What's your baby's name? I ask. Scott, she replies, which I didn't expect because Scott's my oldest brother. He's Nancy's baby, she nods. My father's second wife was Nancy. You have to let go here of all you know, all you don't know. Golden age of whatever's left. On the flat screen TV in the sitting area room, Dinah Shore sings, crying on the inside. Then Paul Anka, Teen Idols, The Ed Sullivan Show. Then song clips of Patti Page and K-Star flash black and white. And I ask Bobby, was that your music growing up? No, she snaps, shoulders swinging, dirty socks tapping. Where am I exactly? She leans close to my face. Heaven, Mom. I take her hands and we mash potato to Frankie Lane, then the McGuire sisters. If there's a heaven, it's overflowing with hospice workers and old ladies. And I say old ladies as a term of endearment. Sisterhood of the caring. I'm Teresa Goodrich, she says, relaxing on a bench in the corridor, sipping apple juice. Teresa is Bobby's age, but there's a jewel in her eyes that Bobby doesn't have anymore. Look at you all spiffy today. She lifts a red Solo cup up At Bobby, who replies with zigzags of disordered syllables. Your mother was naked except for her smile when she came out yesterday for breakfast, says Teresa. But I got her situated. Isn't that right, Bobs? Teresa makes another toast. Thank you, I reply, a pang of sadness rippling through me. I want to comment on the fellowship here. Old ladies helping old ladies. But like Bobby, I can't find the right words. Or maybe words don't matter as much as helping each other. This is one of those serendipitous moment poems. So Winterberry Heights is this beautiful place. You walk in and you think you're in one of those 1950s ski resorts in the Catskill Mountains. You have these white tablecloth tables spread out, and it almost looks like a ballroom, and there's chandeliers. But then down the hall, where the hall gets narrower, past the laundry room are closed doors with a keypad lock, and there's a plaque on the wall. And there's a message on the plaque for the visitors going through that door into the memory care unit. And it's written in plaque language. And I couldn't help but think that there was a poem there. If I just maneuvered the words around, and all the poems in Adrift are tercets. They're three-lined stanzas or three-lined poems. And so I reworked the language on the plaque into two tercets, 6 lines, 2 stanzas. No cure unit. Dear memory care visitor, please remember to secure the door behind you and leave with no followers. And I always felt like that was a cruel, cruel message to have before you entered this space where your loved one was waiting to die. Sometimes, like I told Ben, you just have to take care of yourself when you're the principal caregiver. And because taking care of yourself means you're fueling up to continue taking care of your loved one. This was one of those moments. Rocky Horror Picture Show. Slumped in a chair at a table in the dining room, Bobby nods in and out of consciousness from higher dose of OxyContin. The Golden Girls on the TV booming from the common area. Sophia suggests to Blanche that her breasts are not what they used to be, and the studio audience's laughter makes me wince like it's 1981 again. My brother lives in a filthy apartment with his girlfriend, pregnant with my niece. I'm 12. The elevator smells rotted, Bobby remarks. Jerry answers the door. We follow him to the kitchen where Kathy, addicted to heroin and methadone maintenance, is slumped in a chair by the window, lit cigarette dangling, smoke knitted into a veil that wraps around her neck. Jerry acts as if nothing is wrong, pours a cup of coffee, adds red liquid to from their stash. Kathy nodding in and out of consciousness. I have to go, Mom. I kiss Bobby on her sweaty forehead. I'll see you tomorrow. I made a lot of promises to my mother, and I confidently and happily and satisfied, I can say that I kept most of them. Purgatory. You've had a good life, Mom. You've given me, I'm sorry, wrong poem. Little birdie. Bobby opens her mouth, breath funky like CBD oil. It's Gary, Mom. I'm still here. Then I rub her throat with the back of 3 fingers, her skin softer than it looks, like worn, broken in leather boots. Swallow first, I whisper in a teary voice. I promised nobody would feed her like an infant or invalid. Breaking that promise, ambient flute rhythms chirping on the radio, I spoon a smidgen more of applesauce. One of my fears, and I think it might be true. I base this on my mom's decline caring for her, and then my dad's decline after 4 years um, doing a daily dialysis for 4 years, watching him suffer and asking himself and me asking, when is suffering enough? My friend Donna, who has cancer, she says, when I've had enough suffering, I'm done. And in my mind, I think, well, done with what? What are you going to do about it? What can you do about it? And my dad adjusted his quality of life to accommodate the conditions of his life at that point. And so I'm afraid that quality of life is on a sliding scale. Purgatory. You've had a good life, Mom. You've given me poetry, stories, and reasons to dream. I need nothing. So be done now. Stop hurting. Stop waiting. Dead will be gentler. I try to sound convincing while she lies in bed, not living, not dying either. I'm going to finish up with a few final pieces. I think the natural order is that we live, we die. But in between that living and dying, I think that we can expect that anything can and will happen. And so my takeaway with that message is love. Love each other, be kind to each other, and absolutely forgive each other. All we want is love. You bring me light, says Bobby, as I guide a forkful of shredded egg sandwich to her lips. There's a familiar focus in her eyes and a clarity to her words, but neither lasts more than a wink. I do not want to watch my mother dying today, but we do not get to cherry pick when life needs or does not need us most. Life alert. Balancing a tray of coffee, hot chocolate, munchkins, and my laptop, I thumb the 4-digit code into the keypad that unlocks memory care. The door clicks, a light turns green, and Bobby is sleeping, sitting up in the common area. Other women at various stages of dementia and sickness sitting there too. Carol, picking at scrambled eggs and honeydew melon. Diane, trying not to be seen, covers her face with a napkin. Francis, cradling a naked baby doll. The medtech Denise, whose army son recently graduated boot camp, smiles, says hello as cheery as a bowl of candy red apples, and tells me how my mother dressed herself this morning, like she's learning instead of dying. Mom, I kiss her head and whisper, are you done with this life yet? Bobby's eyes open slowly. Spot the box of munchkins, and she replies, no, I'm trying to keep it. Center point. Bobby toddles from the bed to the closet, to the bathroom, to the end table, to the dresser, to the bed again, red-eyed from sobbing. Mom, please. I kiss her head, coaxing the dead to stop living. You have my consent if you need it. Then she hugs me even tighter, saying nothing. And she rubs my back, small circles, no endings, no beginnings. I like this concept, the law of conservation of energy. It states that energy can neither be created nor destroyed, only converted from one form of energy to another. I like this because it's quite pantheistic. And in grad school, I worked with a poet, or I did my research on a poet who was pantheistic, Robinson Jeffers. And pantheism, of course, is where God, in a very simple form, is where God is the universe, and we are infinitesimal parts to a greater whole, parts of this huge, this greater whole. That concept fills me with comfort. And I'll finish with this last piece. Law of conservation of Bobby. Denise, a med tech who will quit next Wednesday because memory care is a revolving door of turnovers and hardships, plunges a dose of liquid Ativan into Bobby's mouth, lips shaking, hands shaking, shoulders shaking, as if gale force winds rush alongside the rushing of blood in her veins, 41 knots of flesh, bones, and primal confusion in her brown, twitchy eyes. Do you have pain? I put my hand over Bobby's thin, arthritic hand. I want out, she mutters. And I imagine her diaphanous soul separating from her decrepit material form, rising to the fluorescent lights and sailing across the common room, through the walls, into the trees where it continues to rise and expand, wispy, fragmented energy transferring into the warm, yellow March sun patrolling over the frozen Penobscot River in Bangor. Thank you. I wanted to end early enough so that we could have an opportunity to talk, to perhaps I could field questions, whatever might be on the table. And thank you very much for having me.
Gary, thank you. What I'd like us to do is just to make a space of silence for a moment to honor and to hold and to sit with the power of Gary's words. And then we'll open it up for discussion. Well, Gary, thank you. Words fail because yours are so powerful, and thank you for sharing your experience and your articulation of all of it. I am going to let folks speak. If you have comments, questions for Gary, if you want to simply unmute, and you can either raise your hand or use the hand, raise the hand sign. Or if you're on the phone, you can just simply unmute and say, I'd like to speak, and then go ahead. And if you can give your name and go for it, we'll do it popcorn style.
Hi, this is Rafi. May I speak?
Yes, please, Rafi. Thank you.
First of all, thank you for having me join you today. I've not listened to poetry on the phone before, so it's a bit unusual, but I just wanted to say that I'm very moved by the reading. I'm I guess in the middle of the dementia journey with both of my parents, caring for them, and I don't think I have any more words right now. I'm just sitting with the power of the poetry. Thank you.
Thank you, Ralphie.
Thank you, Rafi. Anyone else?
May I just say something to Rafi's comment, please?
Please.
So I So I became a father 16 years ago, and 10 years ago, I stopped drinking. So I've been sober since 2014, and I think that I look not at just life, but caring for my mom, already living only one day at a time, not getting too far ahead of myself, really helped me take care of my mom and take care of myself. Um, it was very easy to allow my thoughts unravel, not just at night when you put your head on the bed, but um, at different times during the day, just unravel and go where I had no power to do anything with those thoughts. And I was always able to rein that in, knowing that, you know what, I'm just going to get through today, and tomorrow will present itself with an additional experiences for me to field, and I will handle that as they come at me. And that really did help, and unfortunately, after 4 years, that um, I got into a rhythm. It's not a rhythm I would welcome anybody to have to be a part of, but it's inevitable, and we're seeing so many people now having dementia. So I don't know if that helps.
Thank you,
Thank you
Gary.
very much.
Gordon, I see your hand, please.
Yeah, thank you so much for the opportunity to be here. And Gary, thank you for just the beautiful, generous sharing through your poetry. I've been involved with folks in a service capacity who have dementia for a very long time in my life, and I'm in a program, a doctoral program, looking at dementia and grief and what's spiritual about it. So hearing the raw and natural and powerful reflections in your poetry inspires me. Particularly some of the poems you shared around those moments where the last one you read about asking your mom about, how much longer is she hanging on? I'm just humbled. I guess I'm at a loss for words now, but just thank you. Much gratitude.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Gordon. Others, I have some, but I want to wait. I want folks to weigh in. Anyone else want to weigh in? Oh, please, Mary Wantrup, I see your hand. Go for it. Welcome.
Hello, everyone. I just really have been through this with my father, who is gone now, but it was just amazing how your words just felt, that it's so personal to me. And I just don't have the gift to put the wording together like you do, but it really just brings those feelings, and how you expressed, what I was feeling so well in words during many of the different visits with him and that type of thing. I appreciate just having that ability to kind of internalize that with myself. And
Thank you.
also,
Thank you.
and it's, of course, you don't want to see other people having what you do, but it's also nice to know that other people have those same feelings going through
Yes.
the
Yeah.
situation.
Right. So you made me think of a friend, a neighbor. Well, I refer to him as Bass Harbor Bob. He works in the ferry terminal on the mainland, and Bob read my book, and it's always an honor for me when his wife didn't have dementia, but she had cancer. And he is not a writer, is not a words person, but he made it clear to me that my words and my stories were so similar to how he experienced his wife's passing and her dying, that it helped him um, heal in a way that he hadn't before, because he didn't have the words to express it. And I just thought, what an honor to be able to have to have poems available and have readers receptive and connect in this way. And I'm as equally humbled when I get that from people. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mary. And actually, I want to insert that the reason Gary's here is because a friend of mine heard him speak and shared with me his book. And I wrote to Gary and I said, I am completely undone. And what I mean by that is that both my parents lived and passed with dementia. And I, think I've unpacked and integrated and things like that, the grief pretty well. And when I read your words, Gary, they gave me permission and opened a space to heal, to experience what I haven't allowed myself to experience because of your articulation. So it's one of the reasons why I invited. So what Mary said resonates greatly. Other folks, we have a few minutes. We're going to 11. Are there any other comments, questions, sharings? It feels like a sacred space, Gary, that you've created. And thank you for that, because it's really unusual to have that, or for all of it.
As sacred, and I agree. It is a talking about grief and dying does open or create a sacred space. But I also would like to just sort of add that it's as much as important as that sacred space is, it's equally as important for us to have these conversations about dementia. Although these conversations are becoming a little bit more commonplace, um, Emily, you mentioned there's a TV commercial from Chevy, and stars from Hollywood are coming out with their Alzheimer's or dementia diagnoses. And I think that the more we break down the stigma of dementia, my mom was so stigmatized when she was given the diagnosis of dementia. She was so embarrassed, and that fear and the stigma around it just impacted her quality of life daily. And she struggled with it, and the people around her struggled as a result. And I think the more we talk, the easier it gets to just say, "Yep, I have dementia. It's terrible, but I've had the flu as well." And so, what are we going to do about it? How are we gonna move forward?
I agree, very much so. And that's a dementia friendly effort, even though I don't really like that phrase, but that's the name for the movement that's now international, is to reduce the stigma, to speak out loud, what it means to live with integrity and respect, and to demand that we be supported living with this invisible disability, and then to acknowledge a space of death and grief. And I also say, without being Pollyannish or Disney or a wand, one of the things I found refreshing about your work is also the humor, the dark humor, which I think is really important. And this question that you raise, when is it enough? And you say, death will be gentler. We do not get to cherry pick. I mean, you open a space. It's not only dementia that's taboo, it's death and grief. And your words create a space, and I'm hoping Dementia Friendly does also, for us to be not alone in asking these questions. And so I really honor and am blessed by that offering that you give us.
It's a pleasure. I have to say that so Adrift was published in 22, so I'm still going on, and I finished writing it in 21, and so I'm still reading these poems in 23, and it's exhausting to prepare. It's mentally exhausting to prepare what I'm going to say, and I try not to have the same presentation for each reading. And so I sit down, and before I sit down, I beat myself up a bit over the fact that I have to delve into Adrift, and then I start working out the poems and I call it connective tissue, the stories between the poems that connect the open spaces, and then I feel alone when I'm putting together a program with these poems because I wrote them alone and I experienced them alone, even though my mother was there. But soon as I am in a room filled with people, whether it's in person or in Zoom, I just know that I've done the right thing and I'm right exactly where I need to be. And I'm having the conversation that my mom would want me to have about this condition and about her journey, about our journey together. And when I click off this meeting, the rest of my day is going to be a high because I'm just going to feel good knowing that a community of people have come together for this very important conversation.
Well, thank you. And I hear clearly the effort it takes to prepare and to offer. And I so appreciate, on behalf of the whole group, I offer this appreciation for your effort and for your presence and for your continued sharing. And we're at 11. This has been recorded. If anyone wants it, reach out to me. I want to thank you, Gary. I want to thank everyone here actually too for showing up and for supporting Gary and for supporting the space where folks can no longer be alone in metabolizing and supporting those living with dementia, including care partners and caregivers. Gary has put in the chat his contact information. And if you want to reach out for any other information, dementia resources, if you want to be part of the Dementia Friendly Baltimore County movement leadership team, please reach out to me. And have a wonderful day. Gary,
May I say
please,
one
yes,
last
go
thing?
for it. Yes, thank
One
you.
last plug, if I may.
Yes.
So, your favorite bookstore, wherever you might live, can order my book, or you can just go to Amazon, of course, and buy any of my 3 books if you wish to explore my work any further. And thank you very much for this opportunity. It was very nice. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Gary. Thank you, everyone. Have a meaningful day and be well.
Bye all.